My parents bought my brother a Lexus for his 18th birthday. My parents got my older brother a Lexus for his 18th birthday and got me the cheapest car they could find on mine. So my grandparents threw them a humiliation party and made all relatives hate them. My brother got a car for his 18th birthday, not a new car or anything. It was a 20-year-old Lexus that was in pretty good shape, and he rubbed it in my face for the rest of the time he was in his senior year of high school. Compared with my brother, I get just as good grades as he does, better in some cases even. I worked my hardest in the hope of fairness. I even volunteered to clean up garbage in my local area. Then my 18th birthday came and went a few weeks ago, and the only thing I was hoping for was a car. I wasn't expecting something like a new car or a sporty car, just something reliable like my brother got. The party was different from my brother's 18th. For his 18th birthday, my mom baked the cake herself. It was a delicious layered chocolate pudding cake. I got a sheet cake from the supermarket. For his, they got a DJ. For me, it was my dad's old boombox with a couple of mixed CDs. We went through the whole party, and my parents might have just been waiting to spring a surprise gift on me. But that didn't happen. As things were wrapping, I asked them why there was no car when my brother got one, and they said that they felt like he'd worked harder for it. I wondered what he did that I didn't do, because I did all of that and more. My grandma was nearby and heard everything, and then she asked them why as well. She lectured my parents that she was very disappointed in them for showing favoritism. Then she announced to everyone still there that my parents thought getting their firstborn son a car and DJ was fine, but not their second. And then she even pointed out how much harder my parents tried for my brother's 18th birthday than they had for mine. My uncle was the first to stand up and say something. Then everyone else who'd yet to leave. I walked away and went in my room to sit and think. I got a few I'm sorry calls from relatives, and my grandparents convinced me to go out with them for the evening. But when I got back, my parents were pissed and told me I'd shamed them to the whole family. I just walked past them because I didn't want to fight. The next few weeks went by with a silent treatment between us. My parents suddenly surprised me a few days ago with a white '98 Subaru Legacy that runs great. They practically threw the keys and the title in an envelope at me and said to have fun. I got the car, and they're paying for insurance for the next 6 months like they did for my brother. I know a car isn't a right but a privilege, so I feel like I've essentially blackmailed my parents into getting me one. Update, I got a part-time job that later went full-time for the summer after graduation. However, 3 weeks into working part-time, the Subaru blew the head gasket on the highway at about 45 miles an hour. The temp gauge redlined, and I had to pull over and call for help. My grandparents looked at the car and found that someone had run a lot of gasket sealer in it, and it was still in the coolant. The car was band-aid back together before my parents bought it and was then barely hanging on by a thread. It drove great, and I never pushed the car hard as I'm a slow driver. My parents claimed no prior knowledge of the problem, but their only real reaction was to shrug and say it was karma for making them give me the car in the first place. Well, that was a mistake because my grandparents were right there to witness that, and they tore into my parents like none other. My grandma told me to wait in my room and let them sort this out. It was 2 hours before I was called back into the living room. My parents were on the couch, and both looked like they'd both been metaphorically hit by a truck. My uncle and 2 other relatives were there now, too. My grandparents had gotten it out of them, and when they bought the car, they just looked for the cheapest thing they could find close in the area that still ran, and bought it, no questions asked. They didn't even bother inspecting the car, let alone properly read the ad. My uncle, who knows a thing or two about cars, told me that the engine would need to be rebuilt because the head gasket warped the block, and it cost more than the car is worth fixing. I had to call into work and tell them I could not make it in because my car was dead. They understood and put me on unpaid leave for the moment. Now, I want to point out that I had no involvement in what happened next. My grandparents told me to chill and let them and my parents take care of this. And they did. A few days later, they returned with a 1999 Honda Civic hatchback with 180,000 miles. It was white like my Subaru, and it drives great. It's not all-wheel drive like the Subaru, but it's great on the road and gets better gas mileage. There's also a list of all recent repairs done to the car, such as a new radiator. My uncle also went over the car before giving it the okay. I thanked everyone profusely. My parents, though, had all the elation of Ben Stein on Valium. They said very little and just walked away. There wasn't even that vibe they had last time of acting like they were giving a new toy to a brat. How they acted was just pure defeat if I could put it into words. The Subaru was resold for $400 later since that was the best we could get with a blown head gasket. And that money was put into my savings. That's only one half of what happened. Though when I said I did better in school than my brother, I wasn't kidding. My brother got a 30% scholarship after he finished high school. Well, I got a 50% one. Not at the same college, of course, but at one, it was comparably good. And that was also closer to saying my parents were shocked as an understatement. Of course, they both looked unhappy as soon as the shock wore off. I decided it wouldn't be a good idea to poke the bear by asking them about it, but my grandma thought otherwise and poked that bear. Stepbrother tore my ear off. My golden child stepbrother tore my ear off because I wouldn't give him money. But I recorded everything and sent him straight to jail. My entire childhood is filled with memories of my elder brother being coddled by my family. My parents are very traditional, and they were certain that my brother would take care of them while I would turn out to be a failure. They would take him to the movies but tell me that I needed to stay home and study. I remember he got the new Game Boy for his 8th birthday, and I wanted the same thing because he would never share it. But when I asked for a gift, they grounded me because demanding things is not a good attitude. Ever since then, I became scared to ask for anything. I had to go to bed hungry one time because no one called me for dinner, and I was too afraid to ask for food. This one time when we were around 13, he kicked a football and smashed one of the windows in our house. He knew that our dad was very strict about playing football inside, so he told them that it was me who broke the window. I tried explaining that I was hanging out with my friends at the time, but they didn't believe me. I was grounded to my room for an entire week, and all my toys were taken from me. By the time I entered high school, I was practically ignoring everyone at home and focusing on finding a job. That's because my parents had made it clear that they would sponsor my brother's college tuition, but not mine. So if I wanted to get further education, I needed to save up for it on my own. So I started balancing my school life alongside a job in retail. Fortunately, I met some friends in high school with whom I later started a business. When I turned 18, my parents kicked me out of their house, so I went to live with one of those friends. I used the money I saved up for college to invest in our business, and thankfully, it became successful. Now, I just bought a new house and held a celebration to which I invited all my friends and family who supported me. My parents and my brother were not invited. However, my brother somehow found my address and showed up to the party in a suit. I didn't want to make a scene and decided that I could accommodate him for just one evening and invited him in. I was going to introduce him to my friends, but then he asked if we could talk in private. So I took him up to my room, and the thing he asked me for blew my mind. Apparently, the money that our parents were giving him as an allowance wasn't enough because he wanted to buy a car. So he came here to ask me for some cash since he assumed I was now rich. I said no because I didn't have as much money as he thought I did in the first place. But he became really persistent and almost demanded that I hand over the money I had hidden away. I explained to him that under no circumstances was I going to give him a single penny. I told him, our parents coddled you like an angel, and you took full advantage of that. I had to earn what I have on my own, and I worked hard for it. I thought you came here to congratulate me and to apologize for the past, but you exceeded all expectations. I'm not going to give you anything because, frankly, you don't even deserve it. Well, he didn't like that. I was finally talking back to him. He started getting physical and began pushing me around, saying that he would do something drastic if I don't do as he said. But I still refused, so he grabbed onto my ear and pulled on it hard. He was always a strong kid, so as an adult he had enough strength to tear half my ear off. I let out an involuntary scream as my blood splattered all across the carpet. The guests rushed in and started yelling at my brother, who then got really scared and tried to run away. Some of my friends caught him and were going to hold him down, but I told them to let him go and just take me to the hospital. They questioned my actions, but I had solid reasons for it. You see, it was my house and I had set up cameras everywhere, especially in the room where my brother attacked me. I knew he was just going to run back to our parents and deny everything, but the police would believe the evidence I had. I got my ear reattached and immediately contacted my lawyer, who contacted the local cops and had them arrest my brother. I imagined that he was taken straight to jail, and my parents weren't able to stop it from happening. But I am not done. I am also planning on suing him for the hospital bill and emotional trauma, which would most likely be successful after an arrest on his criminal record. I imagined that he was taken straight to jail, and my parents weren't able to stop it from happening. But I am not done. I am also planning on suing him for the hospital bill and emotional trauma, which would most likely be successful after an arrest on his criminal record. My parents tried calling me to get me to drop my charges and release my brother, but I blocked them. My ear was still in a lot of pain, but I still sat down with my lawyer and detailed all the emotional stress that my parents and my brother put me through. After including the hospital bill, I decided to sue my brother for $30,000 in total damages. He was in jail when he received the news, so he must have been in shock. However, my parents hired a lawyer for him and are currently fighting the lawsuit. I am certain that I will win, but if this takes long, then my brother might get bail because I haven't had time to take the criminal proceedings forward. I still need to stay focused on my business to keep it afloat. Well, we set up a date to meet where we could potentially settle the lawsuit. I was finally going to confront them and get justice, or so I thought. It turns out, they didn't think that what their older son had done was wrong at all. They were accusing me of being in the wrong for refusing to give him some money. I yelled at them in response and just told them about how I felt regarding the abuse that they put me through. I told them that if only they had just treated us equally, or maybe apologized and tried to get redemption for their actions, I would have no problem being the bigger person and helping my brother. But because they were not only fighting for him, but also still weren't aware of their wrongdoings, I wasn't going to forgive anything. I told them that either they settle by paying me what I asked immediately, or I'm going to come back for everything my brother owns, including his inheritance.